Welcome everyone to the sun-drenched hills of Catalonia, where the SDRL grid lines up at the Circuit de Barcelona, Catalunya, a track that has long been a benchmark for driver talent in Formula racing. Our Week 2 reserve lineup starts with Florian at McLaren, Xbox is in at Ferrari, Jean-Claude at Mercedes, Kai at VCarb, there is no replacement for Jax at Williams, Ryan is in at Sauber. The first meaningful pole lap was a 1:11.4 clocked by Takubi, a position he would secure in his second run by taking 4/10 off the initial time. From there the top 5 would not shift after the flag until Mars moved to P3 with a 1:11.4 and Shan to P5 with a 1:11.6. Looking at the grid, Takubi and Barbans own the front row, Mars and Alex poised in the second row, Shan and Max Bean are on the third row. Florian and Bradders occupy the fourth row and Lay with Jean-Claude on the fifth row. A good number of the drivers opted to start on softs, perhaps with a two-stop strategy in mind, aimed to maximise lap times over hanging on to old rubber. 4 of the front 5 were on mediums, with Alex looking set for the long haul on hards. The approach to the first turn was busy, notably Barbans and then Mars passed a slow Takubi off the line. Everyone made it through the first complex of turns, although Lay had to take to the runoff to avoid colliding with Shan, dropping from P9 to P16. Coming out of turn 5, Max managed to ease himself between the Alpines and into P5. Unfortunately, he then lost the rear and his wing into turn 8 and dropped to P19. Josh easily takes this season's unluckiest DNF when Wins lost traction on the final turn, ran off into the gravel and then careened across the track into Josh, leaving Josh marooned and in the wall. Wins would later DNF. The resulting safety car saw Mars pit from the lead to hards, followed by half the grid. Notably, Barbans, Takubi and Shan stayed out on their mediums. On the lap 5 restart, Shan lost connection and dropped through the pack. Takubi immediately got to chasing down Barbans for the lead. Takubi would take back that lead briefly into lap 7, but he lost his rear through the first sequence and that was enough for Barbans to hold on, although it took half the lap distance to put Takubi in his rear view. Takubi gathered himself and on lap 8 didn't make the same mistake. Coming out of turn 4 of the same lap, Jean-Claude caught Barbans napping and nipped up the inside into P2. An audacious move, undone on the next straight when Barbans retook the position. Jean-Claude would not catch Barbans napping again. Lap 10, Mars's march up the field took him to P4 and around Bradders. Mars then took P3 on lap 11 around Jean-Claude, seemingly on team orders. Barbans took back P1 with a crafty move around the outside of turn 1 that gave him leverage into turns 2 and 3. Sauber's Ryan would spin off into the gravel of the last corner, as was becoming the standard for crashes in this race. Ryan would DNF and the field followed the safety car for another 3 laps. Barbans, Takubi and Mars each switched to hards under the safety car, as did the majority of the pack. Florian hadn't pitted and got to lead the race restart. He made the jump early, catching the net race leaders behind unawares and held the lead through lap 15. Heading into turn 1, Bradders made a nice move on Lay, but their wheels touched into turn 3 and Bradders ended up in the barrier and was ultimately a DNF. Florian fought hard to keep the lead, but Barbans was persistent and precise through turns 4, 5 and finally 6. Florian would come off the track over the large curbs at 6 and bump over the gravel to rejoin in P3. Just seconds later, peeling out of turn 9, Shan seemed to hit the throttle too early and took himself and Kai into the barriers. It would result in a DNF for Kai. The yellow flag would come out, but not before Takubi edged into the lead around Barbans at turn 10. With Takubi P1 and Barbans P2, Mars eased into P3 on the straight of lap 17, essentially locking down the podium spots. But which podium spots? On lap 19, Sert seemed to easily move past Florian into P4, but Florian fought back and took back the position through a stunning move in turn 4. As we'd seen with Florian's earlier battle with Barbans, his victory was brief as Sert took back P4. It was a thrilling battle to watch that would continue through lap 22 where Florian would pit. The race for the remaining bragging rights was now led by Sert in P4, with all the drivers down to Florian in P10 within a few tenths of each other and vying for maximum points. Lap 23 saw a rare event, a spin from Barbens, who to that moment had looked locked in for the second step of the podium. Again, the spin was coming out of the last corner, perhaps a millisecond too early on the throttle and into the barriers via the gravel. Barbens recovered with wing damage, but lost precious time as Mars was able to close the gap. The battle for the remaining points heated up as Sert continued his battle for P4, this time against a constantly pressing Max Bean. Shan, Jean-Claude, Xbox and Epa Ake all jockeying for position. Lap 25 was pivotal. Mars finally caught the damaged Barbens coming into turn 1. Mars's climb up the grid from his early tyre swap on lap 2 had now taken him to P2. Behind them, Max Bean managed to pass Sert into the same turn 1. The question would be whether Max Bean and the pack could cover the 6 seconds to Barbens and the podium. Lap 31 saw the delta to Barbens drop to 3 seconds, but it wasn't going to be enough, at least on track. Max and Sert continued fighting for P4, swapping the lead most laps. Jean-Claude, Shan, Xbox and Epa Ake all bunched close behind. With everyone in that top 10 nursing very worn hards, there was less scope to fight for positions. Xbox would be the one to lose out these last laps. His P8 was taken by Epa Ake and then his P9 taken by Florian at the same approach to turn 1. If there's one thing we've learned these first 2 races, it's that Takubi means business this season. He took the flag with a 4-second delta over Mars in P2. Barbens another 16 seconds back in P3. Barbens' podium would later be amended to P4 with a penalty removed from Max, moving him up to P3 post-race. Sert took P5, Florian P6, Jean-Claude P7, Epa Ake P8, Shan P9 and Xbox P10. In the Drivers' Championship it's hard to look past Takubi at this early stage, with Mars always in the running and Barbens a little rusty after a long stint out of the cockpit. Mercedes powered by Mars are looking strong behind a Takubi-driven McLaren, with Aston Martin threatening if they can string together a few races. Next up, a double header at the sharply contrasting tracks of Hungary and Baku. See you there.